Ever since my daughter was in middle school, she gave me the nickname Podge. And ever since then, that's what my daughter calls me, that's what all of her friends call me. We were always super close, and I was really worried when she was going off to college that maybe we'd grow apart a little bit more. So I just sort of racked my brain, what could I do to try to stay as connected to her as possible? So I came up with the idea that every Sunday, I would record a 5-minute episode about the kind of topics we might normally talk about, send it to her Monday morning, and then she could watch it on her way to campus. I thought it'd be a good idea to resurrect that. They'll be the kinds of topics that I would talk to my now 25-year-old daughter, or the younger version of myself, or people that I mentor, or maybe you. Hi everybody, welcome back to Coffee with Podge. So today's topic is going to be about decision making. Now, there are very few things that I learned in my MBA program that was of value to me, but one thing I did learn was that you should always ignore sunk costs in decision making. So let me give you an example. And this one might seem a little bit extreme, but I'm going to use relationships and marriage as an example. Let's say that you've been with someone for 5 years, 8 years, 10 years, whatever it might be, and you, through some set of circumstances, doesn't really matter what they are intellectually certain that you're not well suited to each other and that long-term you're not going to make each other happy. And you're not pretty sure, you're not mostly sure you're positive. And I'm speaking from experience where I definitely came to that knowledge in my first marriage. And I decided, to me so while emotionally it was a very difficult decision, intellectually it was a very simple one. If the person you're with, let's just say the person you're with doesn't love you, doesn't like you, doesn't even enjoy spending time with you, then, at that point it's kind of an easy intellectual decision, even though emotionally it's very difficult. So you could say, oh my God, we spent all this time together, we have all these shared experiences. If I do end the relationship or I do end the marriage, I'm going to have to start over with somebody else. So when you put value on the historical aspect of it, that's sort of giving value for sunk cost. Another good example would be, people that make the mistake of doubling down on a bad investment. So, you've put $50,000 into a stock, that stock is tanked, you hold out some very tiny hope that it might rebound. Well, let me buy it now because it's dipped in price so much. That would be fine if, there was some intellectual reason for why. There are cycles, there's a downturn in the economy. When the economy comes back, it's going to improve. That would be an intellectual reason. But oftentimes, those kinds of decisions, the doubling down concept is the opposite of ignoring sunk costs. That's putting super high value on sunk costs, and that's the worst thing you can do. Which is a good segue to my next thoughts about decision making. Most people make most of their decisions emotionally, but they think they make them intellectually. And there's been all kinds of research around this in terms of what makes someone purchase a car, the sound the car door makes when it closes, the smell of the car. These are things that are huge factors in people's decision making, the hum of the engine, the sound of the exhaust system. These are things that sort of tug at your emotions as opposed to your intellect. So again, you have to just know that most of the time your emotions are going to influence your decision making. And so then you have to ask yourself, what can I do to try to extract as much as possible, you'll never do it perfectly, as much emotion out of the decision as you possibly can. And there's a couple ways to do that. One way to do it is to imagine that the outcome didn't matter. So try to take the consequences of the decision out of it, and it sort of takes the you out of the decision process a little bit. And again, I wouldn't do this exclusively. This isn't the only thing I would do to help make a decision, but it's just one sort of tactic. The other thing that I find is really helpful is instead of thinking about the decision for yourself, think about this as someone you absolutely love, cherish, want nothing but the best for, a sibling, a best friend, whatever it might be. And this person was coming to you for advice about this decision you're about to make. It's much easier to take your emotions out of a decision that you're helping someone you care about make than making it for yourself. So again, try whatever techniques work for you to try to take your emotions out of the decisions. Another point I wanted to make is perhaps one of the best pieces of advice I'd ever been given and it was given by a dear friend of mine, one of my professional mentors, Sharon Grossman, just a wonderful human being. She gave me this wonderful piece of advice years ago. Sadly, she's passed away. But she said that all decisions, especially the really big ones that you make, will either be based in fear or they'll be based in hope. And you could substitute the word love for hope if you want to. And her advice was, whenever you feel like you're making a fear-based decision, so let's say your fear-based decision was I'm going to choose A, choose B. If you're making a hope-based decision and you're thinking you should choose A, stick with your choice. That single piece of advice has been one of the most useful things that I've ever heard, and it's never steered me wrong. So again, hope-based decisions, love-based decisions, stick with those. Fear-based decisions, do the opposite. And I would argue too, greed-based decisions kind of fall into that fear category. The other thing that's really important to think about is when you're making a decision, put it into one of two categories. Is this a decision that's easy to reverse, or is this a decision that's hard or expensive to reverse? So let's say buying a home, right? You buy the wrong home at the wrong time in the wrong market conditions. Maybe, your job situation's uncertain, and so maybe you have to relocate. The costs associated, the risks associated with making a bad decision there, very, very high. Decision like that, you want to have as much data as you possibly can before you make that decision. You should always try to make data-driven decisions, but I think it's fine to, again, if 100% was perfect information, with decisions that are very hard or very, very expensive to switch, you want something like 75, 80% complete information. Again, never get close to 100, but you want a lot of information before you make that decision if it's hard to reverse. If it's an easy decision to reverse, and quite frankly, a lot of decisions that we agonize over are quite easy to reverse, maybe you only need 30 or 40%. You need some directional data, because you make a decision, it's the wrong one, make adjustments, make a different decision. So again, big decisions, expensive decisions, hard to reverse decisions, get as much data as you reasonably can in a reasonable period of time. Easy decisions to make them quick and make adjustments. The last point I'll make is around confirmation bias. So, and this ties into the emotionality of some decisions too, which is, if you really think back to all of the tough decisions you've ever had to make in your life, who to go out with, who to marry, who to have kids with, what college to go to, should I go to college, which job to take, which investments to make. You almost always knew what the right decision was. I could go back and I could tell you, I just know the decisions that I knew are the right ones and the ones that I kind of talked myself into. And there's a concept called confirmation bias, where you seek information to support the conclusion that you want to have, or that you already have a preliminary conclusion on. So just be really careful of confirmation bias, because what will happen is you'll be on the fence about a decision. Should I buy, and I'm just going to make up an example. There's this $150,000 car you're just dying to have. Emotionally, you want this car desperately. There's a big part of you that you can't afford it yet. There's this other car that's $50,000, also nice, but just not going to give you that feel that you want. Well, confirmation bias can, the emotionality of decision-making can nudge you towards making the purchase that maybe you shouldn't make. So anyway, think about the decisions, how emotional and how intellectual, or, how objective are you being about it? And try not to let yourself kind of talk yourself into it by seeking evidence to support the conclusion you've already had. Anyway, hope you enjoyed the Coffee with Podge episode on decision-making. Talk to you next time.